All right, everyone, welcome back. When it comes to industry names, few are as widely recognizable as J.J. Kinahan, CEO of IG North America, better known to investors as the parent company of TastyTrade. J.J. also sits on the board of many professional and philanthropic organizations, and he's a frequent guest and contributor to Forbes and CNBC. J.J., so great to see you again. Thanks for stopping by.
Always a pleasure to be with you, Mark.
So let me ask you this. Tomorrow you're going to be kicking off the conference. You're going to be moderating a panel talking about the evolution of retail. With that in mind, do you mind giving us a preview? In your opinion, how has the retail investor evolved since you and I spoke a year ago?
Certainly. So I think the main point I think that I think about with retail trader evolvement is just more educated. They're just smarter. They make better decisions. They start to understand the markets better.
Okay.
You know, we continue to add products. There was just a filing for 0 DTEs on individual equities. We've seen the advent of event contracts. We've gone to 24-hour equity trading. And what continues to happen is the retail trader gets involved, leads the way, and constantly evolves how they think in order to take advantage of these products. The most underrated thing, Mark, about an individual trader, and people don't appreciate this, there's two things that are unappreciated for the individual trader.
Okay.
Number one, the amount of time they put forward to really understand how this works. We take it for granted, having spent most of our lives in this industry, how products work, et cetera. But when you talk to people who are doing other jobs and spending their time on weekends or at night really learning the products, it's actually inspiring.
Right, certainly.
And then number two, how good they are with money. You know, think back to our days on the floor, et cetera. You never thought, oh my God, do I have enough money to make this trade? Yet the retail trader has a limited amount of money to work with, so they really plan out how much money they put into every single trade. And so it's just really amazing to me, the more I talk to people, how smart they are in every single aspect of what they're doing. And what that actually does is make them better investors overall, because they continue to learn, some of it just by pure absorption and much of it by the work they're putting in. And what you do all week, you know, in terms of putting out great content that's free, that's reputable, that's the kind of thing that continues to help our industry.
Well, thank you. We certainly love hearing that. And your points are good ones. I do agree that I think today's investor, especially, you know, the younger demographic, right? Certainly things are skewing younger.
You know, this is truly a case of a rising tide lifting all boats.
Yeah,
the more
I like
people
that.
understand, the more they're willing to participate in the markets, the more that retail participates in the markets, the more confidence it gives everybody. And I think if you look at, you know, every year, it's just gotten better for the retail investor in terms of what happens, particularly on the option side of the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's shift gears for a second. So again, staying with the retail investor, markets lately have been bananas, you know, for lack of a better word.
That's a friendly word.
Right. So with all of that volatility that's going on, how do you feel a retail investor might approach that volatility? And let me dial that back a second. How can they take advantage of it? Or equally as important possibly, how do they stay away from it? So do you see personally volatility as an opportunity, or do you see volatility as, you know what, I'm staying out of the water until this is done?
I'll start this answer to this question with two words: smart risk. And so let me go from there. Volatility as an options trader usually meant really good things to me.
Yeah.
However, if someone is newer, if someone is like, oh my gosh, I'm not sure what to do, the biggest thing that I've learned throughout my career is when you're unsure what to do, trade really, really small. There is nothing wrong with one contract to start. Or, you know, there have been times in our careers where you're just not trading as well, or for some reason, you know, you can't hit the water if you fall out of the boat type thing. So when that happens, you dial back your size significantly, get yourself back into the groove. One of the things, you know, that we saw from Liberation Day for that following week, it was absolutely nuts in terms of the volatility levels and the So again, you got to think, normal trading day where maybe the SPX has like a $15, $20 range, and maybe you're trading 3-4 contracts. Well, now you were having $100 ranges.
Right.
You can have the same pain and suffering
Right.
with just one contract. And I make the joke about pain and suffering because particularly when you're newer, you probably aren't used to this type of movement, and
Yeah.
it does make you very nervous. So again, the biggest thing you can do for yourself is dial back your size when you're uncertain.
And a great suggestion. And I think you and I had spoke when we sat down last year. We were talking about, what would you say to, somebody just getting into the industry, not the industry, but getting into options. And one of the things I remember you said is, start small.
Yeah.
You don't have to be, slinging, 10 lots and 20 lots. There's nothing wrong with it. Just that single contract.
And just think about this. People are like, oh, won't I lose money when I start? Well, here's what I always say to people on that note. I don't know a single skill I've picked up in my life where I've been really good at it right from the beginning.
Right.
I wish I had. But so, you're going to have to learn. Well, why learn with big amounts of money? Learn with small amounts of money. Learn, paper trading's fantastic, et cetera, for getting the mechanics.
Right.
But it's not great for getting you ready for the fact that you may lose real money. So on paper, you should see me paper trade. I'm amazing. I don't flinch down 50G. In real life, I lose 20 bucks. I hate everyone I ever met.
Right, right. Now, and it's funny. It's we go to Vegas every year for a conference, and I never gamble when I'm there because just like you said, for me losing $100 is going to be much more painful than the joy I would get for winning 500. So let me, speaking of volatility, let's talk about this. Is that an opportunity for new investors? What are, and even volatility aside, what are some key challenges or opportunities that investors have in today's market?
Yeah, I think I think there's a lot of great opportunity, and what I would say to people is, as these volatility days go on, the big thing you can do for yourself again is think about average points of getting in. I would say spreads become more important than ever. You really want to define your risk when you're having these big swings. And the reason you primarily want to define your risk is because once you do that, you've already laid out worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Once you lay out worst case scenario, everything else is gravy. And so with that, you can also, maybe we're down 50, you sell a put spread, we continue down another 40 or 50. You can sell another put spread, average the prices out a little bit. We start to snap back a little, volatility comes out, the market goes your way in a couple of different ways. And the great thing about volatility is at some point it does contract. It may take a little longer than you think. So even, if you've sold things, even if you're wrong, you can be right.
Right.
And if you bought things, you get an opportunity that even without a lot of instant movement, the volatility going up can help you in the shorter term because volatility means more prices. And just a really, again, if you're newer, I think the biggest way to think about volatility is this. All it does is expand the amount of strikes that can be in the money at expiration day. That's the simplest way to think about volatility. And if there's a higher probability I can be in the money, the more the option's worth.
Yeah, no, that certainly makes sense. Earlier, I was speaking with a gentleman here at the conference, Tony Zhang, who I'm sure that
Tony's a great guy. He's on my panel tomorrow. I shouldn't say my panel. He's on our panel tomorrow.
Terrific. I'm very much looking forward to that, by the way. Tony had a great point. We were talking about winners and losers in trading. And the point that he made that I thought was excellent is that retail investors spend way too much, in his opinion, time worrying about losers and managing losers than they do worrying about and managing winners. And what he was getting at is, if you're buying an option, you spend $100 to buy an option. If you have a plan to, once I lose 50% of that, I'm going to liquidate the position. If you've got that plan, you already know what you're going to do when something like that happens. What people don't plan for is how to make those winners even bigger. So I guess my point to you is, would you agree that investors worry too much about maybe the wrong thing and not about the things that they should be more focused on, which is being profitable?
I think he brings up a great point that people don't think enough about maximizing return.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say that perhaps they don't do as well as they should is when he talks about the downside, what people often say, as you know, is, well, this time's different. I know I was going to get out of it. Well, and as I always say, the only thing that's different is this is the most money you'll ever lose.
Right.
But you're right. I don't think, it's human nature, I think, to sometimes, let's say, well, my losers will come back, but I'm going to take my money and my winners right away.
You're right.
So I think what people have to do, if you're willing to take 50% on your losers, if you're not taking at least 50% on your winners, mathematically, that's not going to work out for you in the long term. So those are the kind of things you have to think about.
Yeah, yeah. I made an analogy that it's like when people are golfing, they spend more time on the driving range hitting their driver than they do on the putting green where it really matters. And kind of the same thing that in this sense, they're worried about the wrong thing. If you know that I'm only willing to lose $500 on this trade, you know, once you get to that point, it's a done deal. But it's the making money when you're profitable and not trying to maximize those profits, as you had said. Yeah, that was kind of the point of my analogy.
As they say, cut losers, let winners run. Many people learn the first part of that pretty well. It takes them a while to get there, but they learn that.
Yeah.
Letting winners run, I think, in many ways is actually fighting human nature more, because you're like, oh my God, this is going to end at some point. It always does, but it often, you can let that run more than you thought you could, and it takes a little while. And again, this goes back to talking about as you start to become a bigger trader in terms of size, you creep that up slowly because you're starting to learn these lessons as you go on in time.
Yeah, interesting. Let me ask, we've got time for about one more question that I want to pose you. I want your opinion on this. When it comes to new technology and trading, what gets you the most excited? What are you the most interested in?
Well, I think the mobile trading by far.
Mobile, okay.
We've just spent a lot of time on our mobile devices, because what we see, and you talked about young traders coming into the market. Young traders are coming into you through mobile platforms. That's how they're going to hear about you. That's how they want to apply for their accounts. They want everything to happen on a mobile device. And it just makes, as we talk about the advent of 24-hour trading, you know, that's where people are going to continue to interact more and more with the markets, because they do everything else on their phone now. If they're banking on their phone, why wouldn't they be trading on their phone? And it just makes, as I talk to my children and their friends, you know, this is logical to them. And I think those of us who have been around a while, it takes a little bit of
the learning curve, certainly.
It took a little learning curve, but the most difficult part of that then comes for our programmers, et cetera, because what people also want is they see this great experience on a platform. They're like, why can't I have this on a phone? Well, it's a little smaller interface.
Right,
so one of the balancing acts you're always doing is to make sure that obviously I think is something that is amazing, can help us. I think it can certainly help answer a lot of questions for people, et cetera. But I don't think that, like any new product, it's really amazing and exciting. I don't think we've realized all it can do for us. But in the shorter term, I look at mobile, because that's where I think people are just more and more drawn to, and the industry is making that change.
Yeah, excellent. I love it. It's a terrific answer, and it definitely gives us things to think about. So great answer for that. And JJ, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit with us. I know you've got a lot going on. I'm very much looking forward to your panel tomorrow, I should say. So again, yeah, thanks for joining us. This was terrific.
Thanks for having me, Mark.